Hi, I'm Yavs, and I decided to make this in the advent of Ninja Gaiden 4 being purchased by gamers and apparently actually being played. We at the studio started to consider that games with swords in them are finally making a comeback. I don't know about you, but whenever something like this is released, a very special game scratches at me, like a parasitic brainworm that's dormant until I pull off an uninterrupted 10-minute mid-air combo. We also just witnessed the Western powers that be greasing the wheels of yet another Middle Eastern conflict. The war economy is alive and well. But you didn't hear that from me. System of a Down has been around since 2001. Wake the fuck up, samurai. It's times like these when a particular game slowly creeps toward my frontal lobe until the sounds of metal and blue goo crescendos, and 3 orgasmic words echo throughout my psyche. Wow. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance needs to come back. The memes have been in hibernation for far too long. This game was also the first and last to feature real swords, and it made for an unforgettable experience back in my teen years. I've now replayed the entirety of Metal Gear Rising, but this time it was like watching my grandma prepare Christmas dinner. By the end, the turkey was a strange grayish color. It was a little undercooked, and in the midst of it all, she murdered a minority. The 7th gen console graphics were blurry and pixelated, unlike today's AAA offerings. The squeeze-through tight corridor sections were completely absent, and content wasn't locked behind a paywall. It was unbearable. I'm afraid it just doesn't hold up to today, so we're going to propose a remake. Lest we forget, this game notoriously had issues in development, so Hideo Kojima hired the guy from Vanquish, our uncle, Sam Gideon, to finish development. All these years, we've been playing a highly compromised vision. But don't worry, viewer, we will be exploring Metal Gear Rising's problems, the features Uncle Sam failed to implement back in 2013, and what changes could be made to bring you the definitive Metal Gear Rising experience. From the outdated tree physics to the unbeatable cat boss fight, we'll leave no stone unremade. Let's get right into it. Right off the bat, the game's text and fonts need reworking. They're barely legible. Can you read this? I sure can't. We're going to have to fix this. A developer interview reveals that the reason the text looks this way is because the first time they ran Blade Mode in a playtest, they accidentally sliced the menu text to pieces. What we are seeing is the result of artists trying to stitch the words back together. One might say this can be hand-waved as a creative flair, and the developers did a great job, all things considered. Well, maybe the text was readable back in 2013, but in 2025, on my 57-inch 240Hz dual UHD monitor, it just isn't the same. Next time, don't use real swords, Uncle Sam, because as the old adage goes, where there's text, there's also HUD elements. That was a good segue. To my supervising manager's surprise, I'm actually an adult, and not a baby, that wants colorful jingling keys and slave wages to stay motivated. That said, the UI and HUD elements of Metal Gear Rising have too much personality. What is this? Custom typography and a color scheme that perfectly illustrates the protagonist is using high-tech military augmentations and equipment. Putrid. I'm completely overwhelmed by the artistic cohesion. I would rather a sleek, minimalist design so I can draw comparisons between Rising and my cell phone. But perhaps a bubbly, highly readable HUD design would compromise the subject matter of Metal Gear Rising. It's an incredibly mature and dark game after all. And to that I say, Nuh-uh. Take a look. See how much better it is now. Case closed. Games cannot survive today unless they emulate everything that isn't a fucking video game. Metal Gear Rising's loud and colorful HUD holds it back from thriving in today's market, and a remake would address this glaring issue. Do you remember when melee-focused games used the face buttons for attacking? Because Dark Souls was such a massive success, and the controls of that game demanded that a set of buttons were dedicated to each arm, we now use the bumpers and triggers for combat, and the face buttons for everything else. So, the question is, how do we bring Metal Gear Rising up to this standard in the remake? Well, considering the bumpers and triggers are tied to each arm in Souls-likes, and Raiden too fights using his arms, but also his legs, we'll have to get a bit creative. The Metal Gear Rising remake will be a Steam Machine exclusive, and will utilize the back buttons on the upcoming Steam controller to their utmost potential. The top bumpers and triggers will be tied to Raiden's arms, while the back buttons will control each leg. The remake can innovate by creating the hack-and-slash equivalent of QWOP. With this change, the modern gamer will finally be able to stomach this fossil, and Metal Gear Rising will finally be able to make you feel like Raiden. That's not all for gameplay though. Kojima mentions that the development team had trouble designing the stealth elements in tandem with the fast-paced combat. And this is extremely apparent when we take a look at this stealth item, the barrel. It's too powerful. Take a look. So deliciously stupid. It deflects grenades too. As you can see, the enemies don't stand a chance. They are like fish in a barrel, except I'm the fish in the barrel, and they are also fish. It's just that I'm inside the barrel water, and they are the fish out of water. If there's anything in this video I'd want implemented for the Metal Gear Rising remake, it would be nerfing the barrel. Get to it, Mr. Gideon. We're waiting. Further to the combat, after many hours of play, we at the studio determined that Blade Mode is slightly outdated, particularly the stance where Raiden's feet are glued to the ground. No walking allowed, kind of like aiming in the original Resident Evil games. It feels incredibly clunky by modern standards. As you can see, I get hit a lot when I activate it, but the other instances of Blade Mode, when you perform slide kicks or finishing moves, don't usually have this issue, because Raiden takes more advantageous positions, like in the air or sliding across the ground. I understand there's a risk reward. I'm playing very sloppily, and actually, I absolutely love Resident Evil 4. The controls don't bother me. In addition, Blade Mode allows the player to swipe vertically and horizontally while positioning Raiden's sword swings at will, resulting in innumerable ways to slice and dice your enemy, and a requirement on the player to use precision when they're in need of a quick heal or energy refill. So, we have a version of Blade Mode that feels just a bit too risky and stagnant, but at the same time, it's an incredibly robust and jaw-dropping technical feat of game design mastery. In that case, would it be too much to ask for Blade Mode to just be a quick time event? As it stands, this mechanic requires too much thought, and I'm sure we'd all unanimously agree that all the extra bells and whistles are just worthless fat on what should be as simple as a Doom glory kill. Just press X or something. However, removing the autonomy Blade Mode offers may disallow players from racking up a part score when slicing enemies or objects to bits. I wouldn't have been able to reach over 1,000 parts without this level of control. But you know what? There isn't even an achievement for this. So what's the bloody point? In the remake, Blade Mode will need to be condensed to a single button press if it wants to survive the current gaming climate. Every time I replay a game, there's a slew of things I would have forgotten about, like the fact that Raiden says the word porn. Aside from that, I'd forgotten in certain parts of a given mission, your Russian line manager asks you to backtrack for an extra encounter, very bare bones random detours for gimmick fights. There's an opportunity here for major improvement. What should a game dev do with underbaked side content that does little to expand the experience? That's right, implement fast travel so it can end quicker. With movie magic, we will show you the difference fast travel will make. Here's the original.
Call for backup during your last fight. The caller's position is on your soliton radar. You can engage if you wish. It is your choice. Here comes more of this.
And now here's the same thing, but with fast travel.
We intercepted call for backup during your last fight. The caller's position is on your soliton radar. You can engage if you wish. It is your choice. Here comes more of this.
Instant improvement. Yes, some gamers, especially modern ones, may be upset about having to menu a little bit more, but we've got you covered. Raiden should have a cell phone. If Honkai Star Rail can has phones, and male Zelda can has tablet, Raiden should be able to get in on the action. That way, the new player base can consider this clanker, soft A by the way, a relatable person just like them. You're welcome, Sam. You can have that innovation for free. We're about to start talking about the graphics, but before we do, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for getting this far. The support has been immense, and I had extraordinarily low expectations, so 3,000 views to me is mind-blowing. If you think that number should be bigger, however, you know what to do, and I thank you kindly. If you think the view count should be lower, however, I implore you to reconsider. I replayed this game a second time after recording just to unlock a specific weapon so I could get the footage for a play on words that'll happen later on in this video. I've put blood, sweat, and tears into this, and some of that blood was mine. On that basis alone, you should subscribe. Get to it. Hate watch me. I genuinely love your comments. Old video game graphics are subject to scrutiny because, as we all know, art gets less realistic as time progresses. So the developers of this game were basically cavemen. They didn't know that bowls aren't hexagonal and that people do not eat pebbles. You could make the argument that man was primitive back in 2013. So all of this is still artistically valuable, but what's more important? Maintaining the artistic vision of Neanderthals, or making superfluous assets the player won't even notice as high poly and high resolution as possible? I'm looking at you, Halo Infinite. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. To demonstrate my point, I'll upscale and superimpose a new texture over this asset. Drumroll, please. Instant improvement. But what are texture maps with their diffuse, normals, specularity, and all the other technical shit without the appropriate lighting? This lens flare is gay. In this respect, Metal Gear Rising was ahead of its time, so no changes needed here. In fact, all the other lighting in this game ought to be gayer. But as remakes keep demonstrating, what we're really lacking here is realism. Take a look at these comparisons. Realistic lighting is heralded for removing the ugly stuff, like details on the face and atmosphere. That's right. It's a little known fact that atmosphere was invented to compensate for our inability to achieve reflections that look marginally better than they did 18 years prior. There is no place in Metal Gear Rising today for a visual feature birthed from limitation. I'm so glad modern gaming can finally do away with atmosphere. Without it, Metal Gear Rising can finally reach ultimate visual fidelity. When it comes to old media, we may find things that are offensive and represent a culture that may have been more prejudiced, like Twitter in 2023. Culture evolves, and the remake of Metal Gear Rising will need to evolve with it. Our first exhibit, an out-of-left-field proclamation by Sundowner.
Like the good old days after 9/11.
Because Sundowner doesn't elaborate here, we took some initiative and did some research. He is referring to a harrowing event that shook the world to its core. A very prolific man-made structure fell on the 9th of November 1990, the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is a highly insensitive statement. When the wall fell, it marked the end of the Cold War and unified Germany. As you can see by this post, the gamers definitely won't take kindly to the sentiment expressed by Sundowner. Gamers today will be deeply disturbed by anyone singing the praises of a time when people stopped killing each other and unified for peace and prosperity. Love for 9/11 is completely outdated and will have to be removed if Metal Gear Rising wants its rhetoric to be safe for consumption. But let's not be so reductive. We can make alterations and additions as well. You can tell this game is getting old because Raiden does an appropriation. Uncle Sam needs to replace this level setting with a country that'll remove his need to blend in and is yearning for representation in games today. And we think we have an answer. Unfortunately, there isn't anyone online that can enlighten me as to what this country is called or where it's located. Nevertheless, this might be an opportunity to include the white, blue, and pink nation. I heard the women there are particularly sexy, perfect for a remake of Metal Gear Rising.
What are you doing?
The remake video.
You can't associate the trans community with the mission where children are abducted and brainwashed. And why are you suggesting they replace the Mexicans in the first place? Are you fucking insane?
We've now covered cultural representation, but what about genderal representation? We aren't seeing a lot of women, Gideon. Look at them. It's a sausage fest. Except Mistral and blonde boob lady on comms. It's nearly 2026. The world and its outliers, gamers, aren't as misogynistic as they were back in 2013. As illustrated by this X, I'll have you know this kind of behavior is exhibited by all gamers. But one might say this is performative and there's truly malicious intent programmed into that man's fingers. My rebuttal to this is go outside, unplug from social media, interact with people in the real world, and discover for yourself that everything you believe is entirely true. That man is evil. Please, Sam, we don't just want two boob ladies. That's sexist. We've progressed. Metal Gear Rising needs more women, like in The Last of Us Part 2. Let the gamers kill more chicks. Metal Gear Rising doesn't shy away from sexualizing its characters. This mustache was not designed by a Puritan. In 2013, Mr. Gideon made a valiant effort, but Sam and Raiden here could stand to be a little gayer. It's the modern age. This isn't Top Gun. We deserve more gayer. However, we can't go too far. The industry today is a bit prudish. Modern games are so afraid of sexualizing their characters that today they're all but ugly, baby ink approved monstrosities. And and sex has never been a bigger taboo in our media than right now. So, nothing explicit, Vanquish Man. Remove the poster girls, nerf those ballistics, and remove the suggestive lines of dialogue, like this one.
Guidance, clear them out of the shaft.
Metal Gear Rising is held back by this explicit content and will need to be removed in the remake if we want it to sell. The biggest problem I have with Metal Gear Rising is that there is no politics. Games nowadays are chock full of it, and if it's absent, I simply can't pick up the controller. Recent releases like Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles made the politically charged move to streamline their UI. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, developed by Asians, determined their depiction of an Asian was racist against Asians, and Elden Ring gave the player a body. As you can see, viewer, games today require a great deal of politics, and Metal Gear Rising Revengeance just doesn't cut it. That's it. That's the joke that I referenced in the subscribe. It would be nice to see a remake where they do a politic, like increasing Mistral's salary so it can compete with her male counterparts, or have Raiden say a pronoun. These political inclusions are imperative to breed new life into this game. What music? And there it is, all the features and changes we'll need to have a successful remake of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. To summarize, the main menu needs fixing, the gameplay to be streamlined, more menus, fast travel, the visuals and characters need to be gayer, more women, and much more politics. With all of these elements combined, old fans can finally buy the definitive Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, play it for 2 hours, and watch 50 review videos that all say the same thing for the ultimate experience. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're all fucking
Invincible!
Oh. Why? What was that?
Ever since the Armored Core people wanted to destroy, please say the word. With this change, the modern gamer will finally be like, baby can't speak words.
Do it.
Fuck. With this change, the modern gamer will finally be able to stomach the stomach. Fuck me. Ugh. However, removing the autonomy blade mode offers may disallow players from racking up Gamers today want less autonomy, smoother mechanics, and ease of access. In the remake, blood mode, Aside from that, I'd forgotten in certain points of a given mission, your Russian a burp was welling up while I was saying that entire sentence. I've put blood, sweat, and tears into why did I say it like that? There is no place in Metal Gear Rising today for a visual feature birthed from limitation. I said that really weirdly. There is no place in Metal Gear Rising for a visual feature birthed from limitation. Why is that a weird string of words that I can't say properly?